Okay, we are recording. Well, amazing that after so many years of studying your work of Mr. and Abogado Javier Livas, Cantu, who resides in Mexico, and who has actually been some kind of a teacher for me, because when I thought about systems and sciences and so, I was not aware of cybernetics, and Javier is I think, most outspoken cyberneticians I could find on the internet. And through his videos, many videos, and his guidance and information that he provides me and suggestions that he does about books and so on, I thought I'll invite Javier today and see if we can do a conversation about information theory, cybernetics, system sciences. And thank you for being here. So please
well, thank you for
introduce yourself.
Thank you for asking, and I'll be very willing to try to answer your questions. I hope we can reach some conclusions that are worthy of our public if anybody's going to watch this later.
Good, good. Well, where shall I start? Yeah, we started, of course, we talked a lot about the basics of cybernetics in the 40s and in the 40s, more or less, by the founder and initiator Norbert Wiener and the people of the Macy Foundation, who started to think about cybernetics, such as Gregory Bateson, actually, who I spoke to his daughter a while ago on the phone. So that was interesting too. So I'm trying.
Yeah, that will be so. Yeah.
Yes, she lives in Sweden, and all through LinkedIn nowadays, it's good to find people with who are like-minded like us. So yeah, well, maybe you can say, just a short definition of cybernetics for the audience.
Yes, of course. As you well said, the first definition, formal definition, came from the title of Wiener's book. He did not say it was a science. He just called it cybernetics, or communication and control in the animal and the machine. Okay. In this way, he was marrying the world of things, of machines, with the world of living things. And the common link that was found was the feedback phenomena, where you have machines or living things that you can tell they are seeking to achieve some goal. Okay, they sort of have a purpose, and it's the feedback function that links both worlds. Okay, this feedback function was discovered in conjunction with by both of them with Arturo Rosenbluth. Okay, and then they became good friends. And then came a paper on teleology, and then the Macy Foundation meetings. Okay, but I have to stress something.
Sure.
That the initial definition of cybernetics as something more mechanical was later revised or improved on by Ashby, who came up with his book several years later, where he takes a more expanded vision of cybernetics and says, we're not studying machines, we are studying behavior of machines. Yeah. And then he created the idea of all possible machines. And he came up with this, what I call the paper and pen machines. And he uses all the explanations he uses in his book to show how a machine is a theoretical concept, an ideal concept, and then you can create any sort of machine, and then you have machines with inputs and with outputs, and things start getting more and more complicated. In the end of the story of cybernetics, I think it's not over. It's been growing. I invited Stafford Beer to come to Monterrey in 1990, give a conference. It's in YouTube, yeah, called the Intelligent Organization, where he talks about a cybernetic paradigm. Okay, and he compares this paradigm with the reductionist Newtonian paradigm of cause and effect. So in my view, cybernetics grew from the mechanical, then to the more abstract, okay, control theory, information theory, and then to this paradigm where you are actually in a new field of acquiring knowledge that has nothing to do with causation, but it can explain causation also. So the cybernetic paradigm is, if you call it a theory that encompasses the other world of physics and even quantum physics, okay?
Yeah.
Because cybernetics is as general as you can be and still say things that have a lot of sense, make a lot of sense, okay? So I think that the culture is gradually shaping into a more cybernetic world all the time, and people use cybernetics without knowing that they are inside the field of cybernetics. For example, the new sciences like complexity sciences and all those came, even artificial intelligence, robotics, all those came from cybernetics, which in turn had accumulated the wisdom that came from all the people that collaborated with the Macy Foundation. Okay,
Yeah.
So we can see a process where cybernetics get the help of all these sciences, and then they get into some conclusions, and then those conclusions are fed back to the sciences, and they explode, and they took very different paths, and cybernetics was more or less forgotten. Okay, so when I talk about cybernetics, I'm not talking about Wiener cybernetics. I'm talking about the cybernetic paradigm, which is very different from the Newtonian cause and effect.
Yeah.
The cybernetic paradigm establishes circular causality relations, okay? So automatically, you are in an area where you are trying to answer questions that don't have definite solutions. Everything social, everything very complex. You have models. You produce models that try to grasp that reality, and if the model more or less works, you're fine. And if it stops working, then you change the model, and it's a never-ending process. Okay. I find a very good illustration, being an attorney. I've asked attorneys, friends of mine, what kind of logic does the law use? And they all say, oh, it's Aristotelian, syllogistic, cause and effect. I said, okay, but what other logic do we use? A lot.
Yeah.
And nobody has ever come up with the answer. And it's very simple. The legislative process is a never-ending process. You have an electoral law, and it keeps changing and changing and changing and adapting. And I hope that soon we will have elections which are held inside an iPhone, And this is, when you change the law, you are trying to reach this ideal, but you never get there because democracy is complex and it's an ideal. So cybernetics can solve these circular problems, circular causality problem types, and it can solve the cause and effect, but cause and effect cannot solve the circular. Okay.
No. Well, but I can say that my conclusion then from what you're saying here is that the dynamics of things, the ever-changing dynamics, cannot be solved by a causality, because in my research I come to the conclusion that the dynamics are non-linear. So causality is linear, and non-linear in systems like law, like government, like social society, need adjustment in real time because they are dynamic. So if they are blocked from being changed by real information, for example, then they become non-viable. Is what you see?
Absolutely, absolutely. And this is the reason why, and this is how I came into the cybernetics, because I was trying to connect law with cybernetics. And when I discovered with the help of a friend in the United States, the books and the work of Stafford Beer, it all came together, because I was trying to describe how laws are created, and then it turned out that the nation state, at least in the case of the United States, which has a constitution that's been copied all over the world,
mm-hmm.
you can do a match between the model and the constitution, and it's not a perfect match, but it's a lot of the viable enough of the viable system is in there that the power of the United States Constitution and why it's been working for more than about 240 years. Okay.
Yes.
So the VSM is so powerful that it could immediately map the nation state. And then I wrote my book after having been with the Stafford in 1983. I finished my book on the cybernetics and law and the state, and then I wrote the cybernetic state, which was readable. The other thing was really not too good.
Mm-hmm.
But people have trouble understanding how to think in terms of systems. So the cybernetic state explains how many juridical concepts follow the less complexity to more complexity, and how nation states develop from less complexity, let's say the medieval countries in Europe, the kingdoms and all that,
mm-hmm.
and then it turned into nation states, So yes. I think the nation state won't go away. I think they have like a biological justification. It's the natural way to organize in a country.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure or supporting the idea of a world government, because the specific differences between nations is too large, too much variety to absorb in an international organism.
Yeah.
And I see and I welcome the tendency to don't look forward to globalization so much and try to become self-sufficient. Buy local, produce local,
yes,
and solve local problems.
Yeah,
that's the way. That when we signed the free trade agreement with Canada and the United States, I was one of the few that says, well, we're breaking the laws of viability because Mexico has a lot of things that we could produce ourselves.
Yes.
And we're forsaking those for this globalization. And now the United States has gone back to self-sufficiency, and where are we left? We're left with nothing,
Yes.
Or we're in trouble. So I want to stress the relevancy of the viable system that I then turned into what I call the universal management system, to make it more complete and more rounded and more understandable.
Mm-hmm.
And I can explain it perhaps in 15 minutes or 20. And if you want to understand stuff for books and you have to read them, many people give up halfway through the book because the language, because the way he explains things is sometimes very difficult to understand.
So it's not easy, yeah. It's about the viable system model. It's all about really about the word viability, and I think that is what dynamics, viability, ever-changing, and therefore using the cybernetical conclusion of feedback, so information feedback. Could you elaborate a little bit more on the feedback use, please?
Yes, of course. Well, in the universal management, I make one first. It's all about distinctions, as we used to say, okay? Cybernetics begins with the idea of difference. Once you can tell if there's a difference somewhere, you can start working with the cybernetics, okay? Because you can go into zeros and ones and that sort of stuff, information theory. But in the model, the first distinction I make is between the meta system or the management and the system, where the management has the type of problems that I already described that are circular in nature. That's where all the thinking goes on, okay? In principle, okay?
Yeah.
And then in the operation, you do the things that you already know how to do. If you are producing pencils, you know how to produce a pencil. You know how many pieces it has and how to put them together and everything. You're in the world of cause and effect. And the management is saying, wow, how about the ink pens? Are these going to replace the pencils, yes or not? And maybe you have to evolve into writing instruments, okay? And what happens when the computer comes by? Well, maybe you're out of work, okay? So viability has to do with this metasystemic function where you are looking at the environment, your relevant environment, and the overall environment, and you are trying to adapt and you are trying to perceive signals about changes that are going on that make it necessary for you to change yourself and then to change your operation and produce something else if you want to continue as a business, okay? Yes. But the two logics are interacting because the guys doing the thinking talk to the guys doing the work, okay? Yeah. And those two logics are there. You cannot say, no, I'll just do it with causality, cause and effect. Well, that's the way most businesses are organized, and they get the help of many consultants, but that doesn't help them go out, and they go out of business, There are many people have been getting advice and consulting from big consulting companies, and they disappeared anyway, okay?
Yeah.
Or they don't see the opportunities that they had in their grasp. For instance, Xerox developed the mouse and the pull-down menus and everything that is in the Mac computer, and then later in the Windows world, and they had that. But since their identity, which is the most, let's say, the number one piece in the viable system, since their identity said we are a documents company, they didn't pursue the computer. And now you can compare the size of Apple versus the size of Xerox. I don't know if Xerox exists anymore. I'm just, I haven't looked,
I think so, yeah,
but the average lifespan of the Fortune 500 companies has gone from 50, 60, 70 years, perhaps a century, to 15 years now, okay? And smaller businesses sometimes last 4 or 5 years before they get absorbed or they have to evolve into something else.
Yeah, because, well, the thing is that the definition in the biology and so and in system sciences, they say, okay, when a system, an organization, or anything else is man-made organization is not able to learn and use the feedback they encounter to use it as a learning process, then of course the way to oblivion is guaranteed almost, isn't it?
Well, yes, the feedback involves a circular process where you're constantly taking in new information and you're changing something, and then you learn from what's going on. It's a never-ending circular loop. Okay,
yeah, that's what.
So and the universal management very clearly has identified 18 basic loops between the 7 components. Okay. Stafford used to talk about the 5 systems in his viable system. Okay, you began with, let's say, an identity is what are you going to do? okay, then the planning, how are you going to do it? And then who's going to do it? And then the operations, the coordination. And then those were the 5 things, okay? Then he added a 6th that got the name of 3-star, like a complement to the system 3, which was the direction or the control. So that made it 5.5 or 6. So I said, no, let me make it official. And let's go from audit to error detection, okay? And then we need a shell. We need a protection. We need a 7th system that keeps everything together in a shell, in a shield, and let's call that security and safety, okay? So even if a viable system includes your suppliers and your clients, there is always a border, a hard border, like a fence sometimes, before people can come into your domain of your company, okay? Stafford, honestly, I have to say this, I have found one reference where he said that security was very important, but I understand that he never wanted to include security because he didn't want his model to be used for military purposes, okay?
Hey, I didn't know that.
So then I realized that maybe he should have done that. And in the end, the military found Stafford's model, and it was taken even after they destroyed the Chilean experiment in '73.
Yeah.
It later appeared, his model appeared in documents that have been declassified in 2005 by the Department of Defense of the United States.
Wow.
And you should know that it's a very interesting story, but it's not known that much. It's sort. I can see a friend of mine working together with me discovered this and said, "Have you seen this paper?" I said, "No. What is it?" It's all Stafford's work in a paper of the declassified by the Department of Defense of the United States. I said, "Let me take a look at it." It turns out that the SEAL teams, those special operations teams that have to be really sharp, really connected, really perfectly coordinated, and with their goals very clear and everything, they found the VSM as their prime model, okay, to ensure their effectiveness, okay?
Wow.
And more recently, there's another fellow by the name Bar Yam, I think probably Jewish,
yeah,
that calls these special groups like international immunological systems or something, you know, like those in charge of defending world peace sort of thing, okay?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, the thing is that when people ask me, and who has applied your universal management or the VSM? Well, there are many cases, but they're not well known. I think that the experiment in Chile with Allende,
yeah,
was very well-meaning. The way the world interpreted that was like a socialist or communist project, and I was thinking about this last night, and I started counting the years. It's gonna be 50 years. 50.
Yes.
50 years since the Allende government started in 1971. So 2021 would be 20 years since they started this. So it got like a bad name, and then it was sequestered and turned into classified information and exploited as maybe they have something better now because they declassified this 15 years ago. But they certainly used some of it for military purposes, and we are still not seeing any large corporation using real-time management, okay? They have real-time control of production operations or marketing operations or monitoring, this and that, but not the whole concept of management in real time.
Yeah, the cyber
total transparency and everything.
In the CyberSyn information room, you know, we see, you know, in the last documentary I sent you about CyberSyn from Chile, that there's this like a control room system.
Yeah, they call it the operations room. Yes,
the operations room. Of course,
it's been very criticized that it was all a hoax and that they had one computer and the room operated with transparencies, with slides, the machines, mechanical things. But you know, the ideas are still valid.
Yeah, exactly.
Now we have the computers. We could do that with the computers we're using right now, much better, faster. Internet provides the 90% of what you needed in the operations room, which was real-time information, or you know, access to the information in the world. And I don't know why it hasn't. Entrepreneurs haven't caught on this. You know, they follow fads. They take the easy road. They don't want to change the paradigm. I don't know.
I think that has to do with the analytical approach rather than the synthetic, the systems approach.
Yes, and then you have all the consultancies that are pushing the Six Sigmas and the Leans and the everything that is complicated. Okay, not complex, complicated. No. Okay,
too complicated,
and they're very costly. And of course, very large corporations can support this enormous cost. But you can do a diagnosis of what's wrong in the company in a very short time if you use the universal management system.
Yes, and as I'm still working in the oil and gas industry, I use that knowledge that I learned from you and from reading and from studying system sciences very much to help people become faster in control of their operations or situation.
Oh, that's very good.
So it speeds up a lot of time by saying the question asks, are you in control? And what is your purpose? What is your goal? Are you in control? And I ask them, I say, no, well, not really. So we focus on becoming in control rather than giving them so many books to read about all the junk. We don't really need it anymore. So we can really
Absolutely. I have worked very hard even before Stafford died and after Stafford died to try to make the viable system easier to learn, to understand.
Yeah.
And there are several things that I have contributions that I've made to the model, and I decided to give it a new name, not because I think so much of myself or I am the great discoverer or anything. Just to be fair to Stafford, you know, if I'm making a mistake, I don't want his model to carry the blame.
No.
So I am using the universal management, but I do think that it is much easier to explain and to understand than it is to read Stafford books or understand the VSM itself.
Yeah.
Simply the graphics, okay, are much more simple to understand when you use the universal management.
Yeah.
And the VSM has so many other things which are more profound, more deep in the understanding that I've discussed this with Angela Espinosa and other Stafford beer followers. There are things we have not understood about the knowledge that Stafford gave us through the VSM, okay? There are these axioms and a lot of things, they're beyond my reach, okay?
Yeah.
I'm not trying to get into that. I'm trying, as he said in the dedication that he put in my book, I'm trying to make it work, okay?
Yeah.
To create the new culture that is needed. Frankly, I see this as the solution to the problems of capitalism which are not socialism. I've made 5 videos explaining why socialism will never work when you're trying to establish the structure from the top down. Okay?
No.
The Russians tried to do it with their computers. They never could get it right. And because the variety kills you. Okay?
Yeah.
So if you don't have the maximum autonomy at the lower levels, where you consider people like thinking people, like somebody that's really not just doing the job, but really helping the company to think, which is what Toyota did with their methods of involving people and the control and quality and all that.
Yeah.
Then it's impossible to govern a country from top down. It's impossible.
But still, it's the average control systems are the G20, the G7s, all top-down systems, really.
Yes. Yeah, and they've been, you can see they're very powerful in how they're influenced the culture, and many of the movements and the unrest in the United States come from them, okay? But they're selling something that doesn't work.